So I do this once a week, this radio, and it's meant to break down certain ideas people have, especially about religion. And in the chat also, there's lots of terms thrown around like good and evil and soul. And, they can lead to interesting discussions, but it's been used to mislead us. And the thing I'm going to go into today also has to do with that. It's a continuation of Symbols, Sex and the Stars by Ernest Busenbark. So without further ado, I'm going to go into that. If you're going to call in, 716-213-6816, and I don't pick up immediately, please be patient. I'll be checking the phone board here and there. So, according to an old Irish belief, the navel of the world was on the boundaries of Meath, where 5 provinces meet, and was called Uisneach, where tradition said the sacred fire was lighted. The Arch-Druids called it Midde, and the spot was marked by a large stone called Cúl na Mirian, that is, stone of the parts. The medieval practice of seeking scriptural authority for questions of geography was the source of a belief that not only did the site of the cross on Calvary mark the geographical center of the earth, but that on this very spot had stood the tree which before the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. This belief prevailed until after Columbus demonstrated that the world is round. Ha ha. In modern usage, the nave of a church is its hub, center, or navel. The navel is also used in various mythologies regarding the existence and creation of the universe. The first being of the universe supposedly came out of the navel also. But Ernest Busenbark just glances over here that the earth was round since Columbus or something. Well, that's not true. He must know that, for instance, the Greek knew that the earth was round, for instance. Anyway, continuing here. The sacred omphalos among the holy images in the temple of Apollo was closely related to Python, the sacred snake of Delphi, and to the cosmic egg, which various myths describe as the original source of creation. Yeah, that's correct. All of the time they are speaking about an egg. The omphalos was generally represented as a conical stone resembling the shape of half an egg standing on a low quadrangular base, but sometimes it took the form of a whole egg, merely flattened at the bottom to enable it to stand on the pedestal. So they're talking here quadrangular base. That's like a square. I'm not sure. This may have to do with the 4 elements that they mention in those times: earth, water, air, and fire. And sometimes they leave out the 5th one, which being ether. I don't know. It has to do with a certain kind of deeper meaning, though, because they could have put it on a triangle also, and they didn't. They put it on something with 4. That's why the study of the trivium is also important, that we understand more of what the number 4 really means. So again, for the people that missed it, in short, 1 is union, 2 is the first division, and 1 can also be seen as the one, or the creation, or God, if you like. And it has, according to Pythagorean, I guess, math, which I've just heard a little bit of, is that it can't be divided. 1 can't be divided. And that's also belonging to the set of absolute properties that they give to this 1. And so 2 then is the first division. You see that a lot back in mythology, is that Adam and Eve, for instance, Adam is 1, becomes 2, and Shiva does the same. They become man and wife. That's the first division. And then 3, they say, is the first number, because apparently 1 and 2 are not seen as numbers, especially 1 not, Pythagoras says, because 1 encompasses everything, and then a number would not be an appropriate term. So 3 apparently the first number, and then 4, as far as I can know, is enclosure. But there's so much more to know about these numbers than just one explanation. 5, if I remember correct, is regeneration. 6 is the first perfect number. 7 is the law. 8, I don't know, may have something to do with economy, I'm not sure. Or growth, I'm not sure. Something eternal, I don't know. And 9, they say, absorbs all other numbers. Okay. Continuing. But sometimes it took the form of a whole egg, merely flattened at the bottom, to enable it to stand on a pedestal. In this form, its appearance is quite similar to the loop, or handle, of the Egyptian Ankh cross, which, in its numerous forms, symbolized the female principle. Sometimes the omphalos appeared bare, and at other times it was draped with hanging fillets or covered with cross-hatched lines representing either a plain riband or as tightly at regular intervals to resemble a string of eggs. In China, the earth is visualized as square and the heavens as round. And it's still the 31st of July 2011. And the topic of religion is important in the sense that people have to understand how they've been misled by these various religions. Not only Christianity, but also the Islamic faiths, Hinduistic faith, Buddhistic ideology. Rather not call that a religion. They don't like it when you call a Buddhist, when you say that Buddhism is a religion. Find it a bit strange, though. I think it is a kind of religion. They are more like the Gaia religion than Hinduism is, for instance. But most that I studied of these religions revolves around the sun. S-U-N. It's not a coincidence that it sounds same as S-O-N. In Dutch, we have the same. We have zon and zoon. It's the same. Sun, as in that thing in the sky, and sun, that which may be born if you do it with your wife. Now, there has been, as this is a very important argument, I believe I also made it on another broadcast with Michael Cremo, who does archaeology. And there is this knowledge that has been passed down through the ages. And it has to do with the stars and the sun. And that's also a reason why I'm reading to you from Ernest Busenbarks, because he also has symbols, sex, and the stars in it. And they found, and this is very astonishing for most people, that there is a cycle, and this cycle roughly takes 24,000 to 25,920 years. There's different people using different numbers. And this has to do with the three cycles of the sun. There's the daily cycle, which makes day and night. Then there's the yearly cycle, which makes the seasons. And then there's this huge cycle. I believe they call it the great year, if I'm not mistaken. And beware, anywhere there's great in some title, this is a Masonic term, as far as I know. Alexander the Great, and so on and so on. Anyway, there's three cycles to the sun. Now, what is astonishing about the fact that we know this? It is the fact that there must have been an uninterrupted observation of the skies for over 26,000 years by us, so to speak, or by people that at least had the same mental capabilities to look up in the sky and wonder what's going on and see that there's solstices and that there is ties to where plants will grow and when they will not grow. And this information has been passed down through these mythologies, like Jesus. He is a sun deity. That's why you see the halo behind his head. It is a representation of the sun. It is why he supposedly rests for 3 days and then rises again, because this has to do with the sun, who also seems to stand still or die for 3 days and then begins to rise again. There are so many things that the sun with a U does, that the sun with an O, in this case Jesus, does in his miracles, for instance, that can be explained either way. Like when Jesus walks across the water, for instance, you can see that every morning. If you go out to the sea, you can see the sun walking on water. You can also notice that the sun is making the vines grow ripe fruits. What do you call them? With which you make wine, grapes, I believe. And this is how the sun turns water into wine. There's a passage in the Bible, because there's like 4 different explanations by the 4 apostles, who, by the way, are earth, water, air, and fire represented. And one of them says, after he is being put this sponge into his mouth, with the end effect of vinegar, that you must have said that it was ready, which means that at that time of the year, it was the wine must have been ready, or the time to make wine must have been ready. They're all references to specific times of the year, when to sow, when to reap, and so on. So, there's also you can compare the two when it is said of Jesus that he shall return. And it is the sun that returns every day. You see, there's so many similarities there. This is just what I'm shaking out of my sleeve here, you know. If I prepare this, I could probably do a whole show on just the comparisons between Jesus and the sun with a U, because they are the same. Okay, let's see if we can continue. Don't see any calls. You can call in 716-213-6816. If I don't pick up immediately, please be patient. So continuing, in harmony with this conception, the sacred temple of the moon, identified with heaven, is round. This relation is also observed in the Chinese cash or coin, which is a thin circular disc with a small square hole in the center. I was explaining about the square and the circle. Those are, both, by the way, also very Freemasonic. They like to square the circle. This Chinese coin has circled the square. The union of circle and square, heaven and earth, male and female, represented to the Chinese the divine source of all things. Is that so? So it is the union. Okay, you should forget the rest. This should have read the union represented to the Chinese the divine things of all things. Not the division, because that's the heaven and earth, the male and female, circle and square, and so on. It was probably for similar reasons that the square and compass, the instruments employed to make these forms, became symbols of Freemasonry. And there's a 3 here, so what does it say at 3? On account of the circle and square, the Sabbats here refer to come under the injunction of the word keep, used in the 2nd verse of the 10 Commandments. That's in Deuteronomium or something like that, chapter 5. The circle and square were used by Kabbalists to symbolize the 3 highest Sephiroth in the Kabbalah. Sephirim. Shining ones. Is that the highest Sephiroth? It's probably something like shining ones. The 3 highest? There's this Kabbalistic tree that explains the positions of these 3. They are represented by 3 colors. They happen to be red, white, and blue, as far as I know. The Lord's sanctuary is situated in the center of his palace, and which is most to be averted is the penalty of penetrating into the place of the circle and square, treading on the spot where the central point is situated. Probably this is translated from Harry Sperling and Marie Simon, who wrote a book called Zohar. Doop, doop, doop. Let's see. Yeah, everything okay. The custom of tonsuring the heads of Roman Catholic priests was derived from Egyptian priests, who shaved a circular spot on the tops of their heads to represent the disk of the sun. There's also records of battles. The Egyptians, they held records of battles, not only those they won, but also they lost. And among those records, it is found that these Egyptians, they went out to conquer some land or some army, and then when they vanquished the army, they found that these soldiers, they were also circumcised, as were the Egyptians. So that was kind of confusing to them, because they were supposed to be this totally different culture. Yeah, isn't that funny? Continuing, in countries where women are separated from men in the household, the zenanas, or female quarters, are considered the womb of the house. And certain ancient writings refer to these quarters in terms which may be translated as the between the thighs of the house. The Holy of Holies was the womb of the ancient temples. Connections between sex, regeneration, religion, mythology. Throughout the world, the east or sunrise point was the prime direction and signified light, life and birth. The west and southwest were the land of the dead. Temples, cathedrals and churches were oriented to the sunrise point at the vernal equinox. Equinox means same night, roughly translated. Equi is equal and nox is night. So equinox means there's just as much day as there is night. To summer solstice. Solstice. Sol is sun. Stis comes from the Latin and means to stand still. It's funny that in English you could, with a little bit of imagination, translate this also into sol, this is sun, st, which is the way, and ice is solid. It's standing still, so to speak, and as opposed to water. So the sun in the way of ice. Or to the sunrise point or on the day sacred to the saint to whom the church was dedicated. In China, however, the temple of the sun at Peking was oriented to the sun at the time of the winter solstice. The great temple of Ishtar in Babylon was built at the northeast corner of the wall surrounding the city, at the point toward the rising sun at the vernal equinox. At the great Egyptian temple at Thebes, there was a long avenue, lined on each side with statues of ram-headed sphinxes. Yeah, that's more like what you would expect to be on the body of a sphinx. Let's just continue where we left off. This is about this avenue and the ram-headed sphinxes. The avenue was so oriented that on the 21st day of June, at the precise moment when the sun reached its farthest point northward, its rays spread down the long avenue, passed through the narrow temple entrance, and for a brief moment illuminated the sacred image in the Holy of Holies. This symbolized the impregnation of the seed in the womb of the great Earth Mother by the sun. The orientation of the temple of Isis is described by an inscription which reads, "She, the star of Isis, shines into her temple on New Year's Day, and she mingles her light with that of her father's Ra, the sun god." The particular star of Isis was Sothis, or Sirius, the dog star. And it has been determined by calculation that a conjunction of Sothis and the sun took place in 700 BC. This was the very date on which the great zodiac was constructed in the temple of Isis at Dendera. So it was built as a memorial to the conjunction of Isis and Osiris, or Ra. This is from The Dawn of Astronomy by J. Norman Lockyer, 1894. That idea that it was built as a memorial to the conjunction of Isis and Osiris. The Jewish historian Josephus wrote that as early as Solomon's day, here you go with another mythological figure, his name is made up of 3 times God. Sol is sun, another word for God. Om is the Indian word for God. And On, or An, is the Egyptian word for God. Solomon. Anyway, the Jewish historian Josephus wrote that as early as Solomon's day, the temple at Jerusalem was oriented to the east, and at the vernal equinox, the rays of the sun passed down an open passage to the Holy of Holies, which the high priest entered only once a year. So, why would that be, you dear Christians? This obsession with the placement of churches. It was upon to the east and closed to the west. It was not upon, it was open to the east and closed to the west. There is evidence that the entrance of sunlight on the morning of the spring equinox formed parts of the ceremonies. Many English churches are oriented so that the sun shines through the window above the high altar and worshippers face the sun. St. Paul's Cathedral at Westminster Abbey in London, Notre Dame in Paris, St. Peter in Rome, and the Cathedral of Milan are oriented to the vernal equinox. In regard to St. Paul's at Rome, says Lockyer, or Lockyer, we read that so exactly due east and west was the basilica that on the vernal equinox the great doors of the porch of the quadriporticos were thrown open at sunrise, and also the eastern doors of the church itself, and the sun rose, its rays passed through the outer doors, then through the inner doors, and penetrated straight through the nave, illuminating the high altar. In the east, the dead were always buried facing toward the rising sun. This practice also became widespread in Europe. The orientation of churches in Christian countries began within the first 4 centuries. Despite protests against the custom in the Middle Ages, it continued, and until recent times all churches were more or less oriented, particularly the Roman and English churches. In baptism, the catechumen was placed with his face toward the west, then commanded to renounce Satan with gestures and abhorrence, stretching out his hands against him. Satan, by the way, is also of Egyptian origin. In that regard, check the word shaitan, S-H-A-I-T-A-N. S-H-A-I-T-A-N. Or continuing, or smiting them together and blowing or splitting against him thrice. The ceremony and significance are clearly set forth by Jerome. In the mysteries, meaning baptism, we first renounce him who is in the west and dies to us with our sin. And so, turning to the east, we make a covenant with the Son of Righteousness. And this Son is spelled with a U, promising to be his servants. Orientation was never a law of ecclesiastical architecture. But, yet, it became dominant in early centuries. The author of the Apostolic Constitution, Apostles. It's a sound like Apollo, but I'm not sure if there's a connection here. Apollo is another sun god. I don't know. Apostle. We would have to check the etymological roots. The author of the Apostolic Constitution gives directions for building churches towards the east, and Vitruvius stated that churches should be oriented toward the east. Orientation of lodges of Freemasons is similarly observed. The seat of the master being placed on the side towards the rising sun, and the seat of the senior warden being placed on the western side, which is dedicated to the moon. Among Babylonians, the sun and the moon, there's this, it reminds me a little bit of this number 7. 7 planets. There's the sun and the moon. They are considered planets, as far as if I remember correct. But there were periods in which there were 5 known and 2 unknowns. And the unknowns were the illuminaries. The illuminaries are the sun and the moon. And there is apparently 7 is a very important number. They say that everything comes in 7s, but we find this also back in Carol Quigley's work, by the way. But the point was that of these 7, there always seem to be 2 hidden, and there would be 5 known and 2 hidden. Interesting stuff. I can't remember exactly what they were. He listed a whole series of them, 4 or so, 5. Was a lecture on astrotheology as well. You see, in astrotheology, numbers also play an important role. They get special attention as well. Anyway, continuing, among Babylonians and other Semites, the north was associated with heaven, the overworld, the region presided over by Anu, supreme god of the heavens. Jewish records show that they regarded the north as the dwelling place of the Lord, and animals sacrificed in the temple were killed on the side of the altar northward before the Lord. That's supposed to be in Leviticus 1:11. There is a slight contradiction to be noted here, which probably arose through the astrological system. Because while the north, the region of Anu, is considered the overworld or heaven, it is also the region farthest removed from the south, the region associated with the sun. The north is therefore associated in a sense with hell, the region of darkness. I got another one for you in this regard. The sun, in other words, Helios, can also be hell. Helios, hell. It's etymologically sound. I'm going to continue here from Symbols in the Stars, mythological book written by Ernest Busenbark, a book about mythologies, I should say. The customs which prevailed in many countries of performing dance movements clockwise or sunwise, and of passing wine and playing cards in the same direction, probably originated in primitive sun worship. It was customary in the Orient for worshippers to face the sun during their morning prayers, and this placed the left or female side of the body towards the north. It was perhaps due to this association of ideas that the entrance and meeting place for women was on the north, or dark, side of the temple. Ezekiel complained because the Jewish women gathered there and sat mourning for the sun god Tammuz. Tammuz. Ezekiel 8:14. Oh, really? They're talking about Tammuz in Ezekiel 8:14? There also was located the seat of the image of jealousy, which is Ezekiel 3:5. 8:3:5. The previous was 8:14. And although the Bible makes the image somewhat of a mystery, there can be but little doubt that this was a phallic image, probably an Asherah or an Ashlar, that may be the same. In medieval England, the north doors or churches were reserved for the passage of suicides, criminals, and condemned persons. And the northern parts of cemetery were believed to be gathering places for evil spirits. In China, the side of an object on which the sun shines is considered as male, and the sunless or dark side as female. Accordingly, the north sides of mountains, buildings, etc. are designated as yin, or female. Okay, there is a sneaky snake slithering between the grass here, and I'll point you to it. This is the fact that, as you just heard, they're making distinction between male and female. Male being the light side, female being the dark side, good and evil. And then they will tell you that everything in this universe has to do with good and evil. There's always good and evil. You know, it says he even brings in the yin sign here, from the yin-yang symbol, where there's talk of this balance, right? This is a justification for evil. That's the freaking snake slithering between the grass here. It's outrageous. Continuing. There is an old custom in the Scots Highlands of making the diesel, walking sunwise 3 times around the person to whom it is desired to wish good luck. Walking around the person is in the opposite direction, or with her shins, brings bad luck. In the west of England, it is said that if an invalid goes out for the first time after an illness and makes a circuit, the circuit must be with the sun. If against the sun, there will be a relapse. In Devonshire, it is believed that blackheads or pinsoles may be cured by creeping from east to west on hands and knees, or through a bramble 3 times. Strange, huh? In China, Tibet and India, the stupas or shrines have raised platforms around them for circumambulation of pilgrims. Yeah, they run around this huge pillar. And Islamic religions also That's a phallus. They are walking around clockwise. It has to do with the sun again. A similar custom prevails at the Kaaba at Mecca. And that's what I just said. At the Holy Sepulchre at Jerusalem. Almost universally, the right hand has represented masculinity and good fortune. The left hand is associated with femininity and bad luck. This is exemplified by our word sinister, which originally meant left-handed. Evil, unlucky, sinister. And by the word dexterous, meaning right-handed or lucky. Dexterity comes to mind. Most people are right-handed, are more dexterous with their right hand than their left hand. To Arabs and Abyssinians, the right hand is the hand of honor. The right side is the side on which distinguished guests are placed. The left hand is the hand of dishonor, for which reason the left hand is used to perform all acts which are considered unclean. The Jews also preserved this custom. In performing ceremonies in Jewish temples, every turn must be made to the right of way, Yoma 15b, whatever that is, Yoma 15b. Probably some book out of their holy scripture, some chapter. Similar ideas prevail in India. In accordance, I'm going to step back a little bit. In accordance with the law of Manu, a bride... Step back a little bit, said. One sentence, no, once, here's good. A similar custom appears to have existed among the Romans and Celts. In accordance with the law of Manu, a bride of Vasavadata ceremony must walk 3 times around the domestic hearth. Or she and the groom may walk around the central pole. What do you think that is, huh? In the marriage shed, or a sacred building, tomb, or sacrifice. In all the ages, the hand has been the symbol of strength, power, authority, and creative activity. The raised hand may represent a warning or a sign of protection. During the Middle Ages, the hand of God was often used in this sense in Christian art. In India, the raised hand is a sign of Shiva and is often found engraved on sacred stones, village gateways and sacred groves. Egyptians often used the hand as a symbol of the creative power of the sun. One account tells us that a colossal right hand of the mighty god Anu was mounted on the summit of the Tower of Babel. Hindus and early Mexicans impressed the hand, covered with blood over vermilion, on the doorpost of their temples, that is, on the Delphus or door of life. Hand in the Dutch is the same, in writing anyways, but we have funny derivations, what do you call them, derived from. The word hand, we say hand. You say hand. There's a little difference there. But we also say, for instance, handel, which is hand, L. Now, L, you should know. L is known term in the Bible, okay? It's a god. What does hand L or handel in Dutch means? Business. You see? A divine hand with the thumb and 2 forefingers resting on a cruciform nimbus was an Egyptian symbol of Isis. The first finger, which is the only one which can stand alone, is a symbol of the Creator. What is that? What does it mean with that? Divine law and wisdom. What do you mean with that? The first finger, which is the only one which can stand alone. Well, what do you mean? I'm not sure. Blah, blah. Anyway, the middle finger represents the Holy Spirit. And why is that? A side view of the hand with the thumb and forefinger forming an O and the other fingers raised is a male sexual symbol. Oh, really? It may also be read as 1 and 0 or 10, a Kabbalistic number for the Creator. Is that so? I've heard other explanations. On one hand pointed upward and the other pointed downward is a sign of heaven and earth, called in India the sign of the witness. It is common in China as well as in all other countries where Buddha is venerated. Examples of the heaven and earth sign they have been found in Babylonia. In Greece, they have been found on articles connected with the Eleusinian mysteries. During the 14th, 15th, and 16th century, this sign was much used in Europe. Hands crossed downward signify the cross of the equinox, or the St. Andrew's cross. In Christian art, it represents the burial and resurrection of Christ, or the Son. The sign of the Vesica Piscis is made by raising the first two fingers and bending the third and fourth finger over so as to meet the thumb. Jewish priests make a similar sign when pronouncing benediction, except that they raise the three middle fingers. The significance of the mystic poses of the hands of Jewish rabbis shown in plate 32, figures 7, 8, and 9, is best revealed by comparing them with the hands of a Hindu dancer showing on the same page, and with various symbols of the matrix. Horns are dedicated. By the way, this reminds me of the dancer, the Hindu dancer, reminds me of a story, a mythological story about Arjuna. There was a time when he was supposedly walking in the woods, and he was spotted by a heavenly being. And this heavenly being tried to seduce him. But Arjuna, being married already, said that he would have to ask his wife first. And so this very much upset the heavenly being, and she cursed him. This all took place in the heavens. She lured him up there, and he was in the palace of Indra. And so she cursed him, and Indra got to know of this curse, and he told her, I should say, to adapt the curse a bit and to make it only last for 1 year. And the curse was that Arjuna would be turned from a man into a woman. And this all plays out in a battle, in which he wins, by the way, because of this possession of the women, the feminine side. I mean, he was taught this aspect of the feminine side when he was taught to dance in the palace of Indra. And this has to do with arts. This has to do with music, which is one of the seven liberal arts. And so with the combination then of Arjuna as himself and him being cursed as a woman for a year, he was able to defeat. There's also Facebook, the Orion Talk Radio Network. Lots of articles there. One I see here interesting, Agenda 21, coming to a farm near you, for instance. This is, I believe there's still some people out there that believe Agenda 21 is some kind of conspiracy theory or something. No! This is written by the United Nations themselves. It has to do with the meeting they had in Rio de Janeiro, 1992. It's freaking unbelievable sometimes. Disinformation, the people are fed. Because there's these attacks on alternative media, that they are not backed by documents and facts and things like that. Yeah. When it's the other way around. It's the mainstream media that is feeding you the mythology that you call the American dream. So you can call in 716-213-6816. And I'm going to check the call board now and then to see what's going on. You can also ask questions in the chat room. You can get there if you go to oriontalkradio.com. Click on the Solvinor Radio home thing there. Not the Solvinor Radio website, but the Solvinor Radio home, and you will enter the chat right there. And you can ask questions, paste comments. And I'll also try and keep an eye on that. So, we were at the horn sign, originating in moon worship, became a sign of divinity. The horn has come from the moon because it's, when you look at the moon, especially in their phases when it's just beginning to grow larger, or when it's beginning to end, you see that the moon makes horns either to the left or to the right. And that's where it comes from. Horns of the bull or cow, typifying honor, power, and royal dignity, were placed over doors as talisman of good luck. Ishtar, Cybele, Isis, Diana, and other mother goddesses possessing moon characteristics were usually portrayed with a crescent moon over their heads. The Egyptian goddess Hathor, the world cow, was often portrayed as having the head of a vulture, surmounted by a crescent or horned moon and a solar disk. Excuse me. Today, in Italy and other countries, superstitious people make the horn sign to avoid the evil eye. In Greek art, the cornucopia, or horn of plenty, was associated with the gods and goddesses of vegetation. Again, pointing to the moon. The moon has more to do with vegetation than you would think at first hand. Oh, there's by the way more that the moon does, not only with plants. There's also, for instance, animals, fishes, some kind of fish, can't remember their name. They live very, very deep in the water, below 300 meters. And there is no light from the moon. However, according to the moon's phases, these fishes will rise up and go and sprout and make new fishes and things like that. So you see, it does have an effect on other living beings as well. Not to mention women. All of the other mystery religions used secret signs, gestures, and passwords for the identification of members. As the pagan cults began to disintegrate several centuries before the Christian era, numerous minor sects sprang up. By the way, I just mentioned women and the lunar cycle. The same goes for men. They are tied to a solar cycle. Etc., which maintained many of the old secret rites and practices. Long before the Christian church was founded, the general pattern of religion organization had become well established by tradition. As the new religion took form, it adopted many of the rites as well as the secret hand claps, signs, and passwords of the older cults. In Rome, Their use was particularly widespread because of opposition to the new religion during the first 3 centuries of its existence. Unbaptized persons were not permitted to be present at the Holy Communion. And even now, scrolling here, secrets of the Mass are made known only to the priest. In the Greek Orthodox Church, a curtain is drawn across the sanctuary so that consecration cannot be witnessed by those outside the priesthood. Here is, I was scrolling over 17 figures. They are hand signs. There is a sign of the Creator, a Holy Trinity, gesture of Catholic and Episcopal priests in giving benediction. The fourth is the Jewish benediction. Some hand sign regarding Vesica discus, sign of the horn, a phallic sign, mystic signs of Jewish rabbis. Mystic signs of Jewish rabbis, is that all? No explanation as to what they mean then, huh? Hands of the Hindu dancer. And yoni signs, same as another yoni sign, union of male and female is 17. If you want to take a look at these, you can do so. You can either email me or contact me on Skype. It goes via this way. Solvinur is for Skype, Solvinur, and I will give you this PDF. Or you can email me, Solvinur, Solvinur, the number 1 at yahoo.com, and we shall try and do it that way. Impossible. Okay, let's continue here. In early Christian religious art, great attention was given to the pose and arrangement of hands, heads, and costumes of the saints, virgins, and other figures portrayed, so that the statues or images would fully typify the persons represented. In time, the making of holy images and paintings became reduced to a mechanical formula, with the result that the early Christian art degenerated into a stilted, unimaginative formalism, which was not overcome until art was rejuvenated by the Renaissance. Renaissance came alongside, in the same period, so to speak, as that the Arabs introduced to us the trivium again, the 7 liberal arts, because we had lost that. In every country and period, grips and signs with the hand and arm have been employed by secret societies, religious bodies, trade guilds, thieves, prostitutes, and robbers to pass information between members and associates. In Oriental countries, pantomimic acting and dancing with the hands, arms, and body have been developed into high complex systems, which are almost unknown in the West. Stories and plays are enacted by poses of movements or such great variety that a book could easily be devoted to the language of the hands alone. Terminology is one of my specialties, maybe, I don't know, it's a bit arrogant maybe, but I find that there's a lot of terms being used all over the place and people have no clue what they're talking about. Like, for instance, the term mind and mind control. The term mind is pretty big, so to speak. You hear it so much that you assume that everybody knows what it is. But I've asked many times in many chats, what is mind? And I got all different kinds of explanations. One being, for instance, that is what you use to distinguish between good and evil. Well, no, that's intelligence. That's what you use to distinguish between good and evil. So what is mind? It has to do with three basic things. And they are thinking, a feeling, and wanting. Anything that has to do with those three things pertains to mind. So when they talk about mind control, they are talking about controlling your thoughts, your feelings, and your wants. There's nothing to do with needs. You need water to survive, otherwise you die. It is not a want. You don't, you may say, I want some water, but it is really a need. A natural law, so to speak. But wants are different, and they are controlled in the mind. Mind is a tool you can use, and it can be used against you or with you. And most people have wasted their mind, and it's so filled with nonsense, and to me it's amazing. These people can still open their eyes. They can still live, so to speak. And they aren't really alive, though. If there is no truth in you, then you're in no way to be considered alive. You are dead. If you have no intelligence, in the sense of, there's another explanation of intelligence, and that is knowledge. As in the sense that secret organizations like CIA uses intelligence. It's plainly, simply facts. If you lack the facts, then you are considered dead. And the facts have been kept from you for ages and ages and ages. And there has been placed in between a mirror. And it has reflected in your mind, in your life, these ideas about how society is supposed to work and what your role in society is supposed to be. It no longer has anything to do anymore with what it is to be human. That has totally been lost. It also comes back when you look at the war that is waging against the natural law, using legal positivism. So let's see if what we can do here in the last few minutes. Nobody's calling in, so. In the language of symbolism, everything in creation that resembled the presumed creator, whether in name, character, function, or shape, was supposed to represent the deity. As gods were invariably anthropomorphic, it followed that the creative powers of the gods were of the same form and character as their human models. Differences in physical structure which distinguished the human male and female were employed to denote the male and female gods. In their grossest forms, these symbols consisted of realistic representations of the generative organs. In their most refined esoteric or abstract form, they consisted of mere circle or oval for the female and an upright shaft or pillar for the male. These two basic forms were used either separately or in conjunction, and in an endless number of variations to signify not only male and female characteristics, but to represent as well the generation and production of life and the gods who ruled over these functions. In simple combination, the pillars and circle appear as 1 and 0, which may be read as either Io or the number 10. Symbolically, 10 is the number of perfection, completeness, and divinity, and for many ancient peoples, it symbolized the supreme deity. And in this case, the number 10 is the number 1, because 0 doesn't exist. Both the number 10 and Yod, the 10th letter in the alphabet, were assigned to Yahweh by the Jews. Characteristics attributed to the gods were indicative of their personality and functions. Their titles contained allusions to the sun as to the source of the creative energy and the masculine emblem. They were esteemed to be powerful, high, erect, firm, bright, happy, upright, large, noble, hard, mighty, and able. Generally, they were associated with animals which possessed similar characteristics, such as ram, goat, bull, ass, elephant, lion, which were noted for their strength and lustfulness. Large, powerful men resembled the prevailing conception of a god and were called men of God and God-men. Strong animals were called by such terms as bull of God or ram of God. Female deities were designated by titles which alluded to the moon and the beauties and functions of woman. Advantage was taken also of the tripliform character of the male generative organs to effect a further refinement in the primary symbols by arranging 3 things so that one should stand between and above the other 2. That's like a triangle with 6 equal sides. Sometimes a bar was placed across the end of an upright shaft, thus forming a cross-like tau or T. In its Ethiopic form, a tau or T is the exact prototype of the Christian cross, and some writers have asserted that the cross was derived from the tau. I can tell you from my researches that the cross represents the sun. It represents the way in which the sun moves. The cross, the horizontal bar of the cross, the 2 ends are the 2 solstices. The top and the bottom stripe, so to speak, could be seen, and this is an idea, I'm not sure about this, but they could also be seen as a sun having different angles and therefore casting different shadows, different length shadows. However, there is also a geometrical significance in this cross, because you can also place this in the tree of Kabbalah and put it on certain points. But the cross for sure has to do with the sun and its movements around the earth, not only on a daily basis, but especially on a yearly basis. And there's the 3rd ring as well.